Hold up. How are we doing today? Party people, welcome back to another Monday Night Raw. Group Critique Fight Club. The Public Night School edition here. Monday evenings, 7 p.m. EST on the YouTubes. It'll be really nice to self-host this, not on some silly ass Google platform, but alas, the infrastructure is here. I do not have my own. Hope everyone is doing well. We got ourselves some interesting tracks up on deck for today. Once again, this stream is in small part thanks to the support of our homies at Tape Trade. We will be listening to our tracks this evening off of a public Tape Trade playlist that we will post for everyone to stream on their own afterwards if they feel like just hearing some tracks and not hearing me gab about it. Sign up for Tape Trade for as little as $1 a month to be sharing your stems, sharing your audio, sharing your playlists, sharing your electronic press kits for those sending out those private tracks to the press or to the labels. You can use Tape Trade and know that there will not be any data brokering involved, unlike our good friends at Dougal Grive. I'm not going to be naming names, but Dougal Grive and Brop Docs, our favorite, and P Transfer, another great one. All take your data. They all take your fucking data. They're all going to sell that shit to some massive LLM library making thing that's going to sell that shit to Suno, and then all of a sudden your demos are fair game for some evil ass shit. Some evil slot machines out there. That shit's only getting more nefarious. So, why participate in that? If it's free, if the product is free, then you're the product. So pay $1, pay $5, pay $10, depending on your storage needs, and rest easy, knowing that shit ain't going to happen to you, and that you're supporting a nice little small business run by fellow music lovers and musicians themselves. Many thanks to the homies at Tape Trade for looking out for me. We got some cool things in the works in the future. Always appreciate the support from like-minded people who can support when they can, We got some tracks from all of y'all. Well, some of y'all today. In fact, we got some doubles. We got some doubling ups today from a few folks because we got some short ones. I'm doubling up on a couple that we're going to get to in a second. Let me make sure that I can get the screen open. Yes. Google Drive. No, not that. Google Drive. Boom, there we go. Boom, there we go. Welcome. Y'all remember this. And in fact, I wanted to start with one of my own. I wanted to participate. Oh, before we talk about me participating, remember, next week, yes, it's next week, will be our presentations for the September monthly project, which you can find in the Discord. This month's monthly project is all about making pieces utilizing only samples of feedback and its various iterations. How you sample feedback and also how you define feedback can be pretty subjective. So it opens up a lot of doors for those that are interested in taking that dive. Highly, highly, highly recommend the September monthly project. Find that on our public Discord. Create some weird feedback pieces for us for this month. That is due next week. Yes. Oh yeah. Gotta love this. Thank you, John, for posting this. We got our new amazing user content agreement from Spotify that we should just read on the air, just so y'all know what you're doing, putting your music up there, what you're doing, using it as a user. You know, there are so many fun companies out there doing great things with this thing we call data on such a beautiful, sacred thing such as music. Really just love the bastardization, the normalized bastardization that we're seeing across the board. By posting user content to the service, you, on behalf of your subscribing entity, grant Spotify a non-exclusive, transferable, sub-licensable, royalty-free, fully paid worldwide license to reproduce, make available, perform and display, translate, modify, create derivative works from, distribute, and otherwise use of such user content, which is fantastic because they're also introducing DMs to their services. So might as well just like put more of your personal information in there casually while DMing someone. That's always good, especially when they could do literally anything according to their own user service terms and services. So good rule of thumb to be checking that fun ass, what's it called? Fine print. Maybe reading those terms and services before you sign up for some free shit. We should have always been doing that, but, you know, there's really no excuse now, especially if we give a shit about this here music thing, which I'm assuming you do if you are hanging out with us this evening. Anyways, I have a piece coming out in a Palestine support compilation compiled by a few friends of mine, including DJ Bebe out in LA. Thank you, Kumi, for inviting me to submit for that, and figured I would premiere that here as well for y'all. So the track is called I See You, and then some fucking numbers on there. Yeah, we'll listen to that. Tell me your thoughts. I'm gonna be playing my own shit. I don't do this often, but, you know, I wanted to this time. We gonna make it out to Tibet with this one. That's exactly what I was trying to do. For too long, I've been trapped here, impoverished in Tibet, in inner city Tibet. And now I'm finally going to make it out to the suburbs and live the true white picket fence Tibetan dream with this banger. I'm liking this. I'm liking these comments here. Entering grouper mode. I mean, I'm entering grouper mode in the sense that it's like bashed in a tape or a tape emulator, really, and reamp emulator. Did not have enough time to do it the way that I should have with true analog. But you know, I'm hoping that it's a tasteful choice of low fidelity emulation and not too over the top. Despite this, you know, kind of being some Doomtronics return to form for me. It's been a minute since I've done anything but really mostly piano stuff, but this I felt a bit more liturgical from the vocal perspective, which again a bit of return to form for me. But once again cloaked in saturation, including my shitty throat singing, which sounds less shitty through a bunch of saturation, if you ask me. Use the technology to your advantage, people. Cloak yourself if you must. It's okay. You don't have to be a fucking virtuoso. If I was actually doing this in Tibet, I wouldn't make it out without the electronics. I'd be called a poser by the monks. All the monks would beat me up and push me into lockers, you know, at the monastery. This is what happens in Tibet every day. Oh, man. Well, you know, wanted to start it off. I have been paying attention. I have been listening to a bunch of, was it Omar Hound, who I played last week in the lobby? Like a straight to YouTube and SoundCloud. If Chopped and Screwed is, it's like esoteric Chopped and Screwed. I don't know how else to describe that guy. Is it Omar Hound? I forget his full name. I only learned about him last week. In fact, his remix of speaking of liturgical of a Muslim call to prayer, his remix and Chopped and Screwed remix of that got last week's stream flagged in the intro lobby because it was uncleared Chopped and Screwed liturgical samples. So you never know. You never know when the algorithm will strike. But anyways, thanks for listening to my little thing. Now we can start with yours. And we have speaking of return to form, we have a return of a Group Critique Fight Club legend, people, who hasn't been on the air for years from the original Discord. We have Garo the Pharaoh, one of my favorite online discoveries in our community, making some bizarre instrumental productions for us. And they provided us with two, and we're going to listen to both of them because the first one's less than a minute and the second one's only about 2 minutes. So I'm going to give the floor over. In fact, I see the track listing here as 3 and 10. So I'm going to reverse the order here so that we can hear the 2 minute one, 2 minutes and 19 seconds first track, Descent, followed by the short 54-second one, Violence. All right, so this is Garo. Welcome, Garo. Yeah. Hell yeah. Garo the Pharaoh, The Great Return, and in a much, I mean, maybe one person or here in the chat right now can remember the stuff that you had sent back to the GCFC years ago, but comparatively, for those hearing this for the first time, I mean, this is some deconstructed shit, man. You've truly taken you are I hate the term lo-fi, but in this case, I really do mean like crunched out low fidelity beat production. You have taken it to an extreme. You're an extremist of this world of off kilter, semi gridded, semi unquantized production here, and by becoming an extremist, you've in fact become a minimalist. You know, you've stripped so much of these pieces down. It's like we have moments where it's just the bones of production, just the bones of rhythm, like pulse, not even necessarily patterns, but pulse, you know, like especially this use of like this kind of post-punky, kind of no-wave bass synth too, that's driving both of these pieces, you know, very bass heavy, but once we get those low-end kicks coming in, it's like I'm brought right back to the Garo sound, you know. It's like there's still that part of you that's in there that was making this strange hip-hop instrumentals before, and it's now shifted to this deconstructed, forward-thinking, not trying to fit any cookie cutters here. And that's what I think is, for anybody developing a sound, we gotta admit to ourselves, like, this shit's not about pulling something out of thin air, but working within the confines of genre creatively and getting comfortably within these potential limitations of where you might be starting out or where your initial interest might lie. In Garo's case, with a lot of a lot of instrumental, like hardware focused beat production. But man, like, only if you are simply trying to express yourself and not trying to just be a cookie cutter type beat or emulating exactly one artist, if you just are using a vehicle, a genre as a vehicle of personal expression, I think ultimately you're going to find yourself getting further and further away from the cookie cutter and more self-defined. And this is how not only like artists in general become self-defined and truly like on an island in which like no one else can touch them as far as like sounding exactly like them. But this is also how subgenres get birthed. You know, they start one place and then enough people start to, you know, take bits and pieces of it with combining it with other elements, and suddenly there's a new sound that emerges from it, and then children of that new sound begin to emerge. It happens all the time. So this is the Garo, this is the 2025 Garo sound, and I love it. It's such a pleasure to hear these back to back too, because it's, you know, giving us a taste of what this full length or mixtape that you're making right now, Garo. And feel free, if it's already on SoundCloud or something, feel free to link us in chat. But you should definitely be putting this shit out for the public. And, you know, not going for everybody. I don't want to tell people how to release and stuff, but I think it's important to think about including third parties at a certain point when you start to get past this feeling of just making individual tracks, but starting to cohese multiple things together, seemingly into an album's worth of material, EP or LP, and including a mixtape. But why the hell not be pitching labels? Why the hell not be, you know, I'm not saying go hit up fucking Sony, just email Sony Music. I'm not saying that, UMG, but, you know, there are like-minded people who are musicking just like you, but their form of musicking is making a web label or making a Substack that just, you know, talks about new artists, independent artists, you know, like we should be finding ways to get our shit out there beyond just our own social media. I think teamwork makes the dream work. I've been saying that a lot recently, but it's true. And that includes how you are musicking, you know. If y'all don't know that term, musicking, check out that book. Good book, Musicking. Highly recommended. How it's not just about the act of making music, but the act of living it. And there are other people who live it who are primarily not making it themselves, but are supporting it and creating their own infrastructure to allow artists to tack on to. So, musicking. Hell yeah. Fantastisch. Fantastisch. Thank you, Garo. Welcome back. All right, we got 2 tracks. Another double header from Cosmic Veil. First time in the... Well, second time, technically, if you include the Patreon stream yesterday. Cosmic Veil, I'm going to play the other track that you had sent too, if you're cool with that. Garo, I wish I could speak more, but I'm on a spliff and nervous to say something dumb. Don't be nervous. Say what you want. No such thing. I'm not off that spliff anymore. I had to give up the tobacco side. I'm still on the joint. I'm still be hitting green, just not combining it with something that brings my heart rate up. You know what I'm saying? Unfortunately, it's my kryptonite, and I really gotta stay away. I can handle a cigarette, and I can handle weed. You combine them together, I can't handle it anymore. Can't handle it anymore, dog. Back to you, Cosmic Veil. I'm gonna play both your tracks if you're cool with that, because I was such a fan of it yesterday, and I think having them, since it's a short one, into a longer one, I'm okay with that, if you're okay with that. So I'm going to start it off with... We got two. Cosmic Veil, double header. Dark shadows, they weep, they whisper their lies to make us real. It's Cosmic Veil, it's bad and it's true.
like way through the dreams, through my more change that we had reached all with one life's like beauty. They had to pick the stars will soon take that our hope just as songs and dreams. Betrayed, they told me work was here, work in the wait for the but learn once that comes in the build the walls, slow down once they just live out there. While my
There it is.
You arrive like dusk on stone, a murmur deep in marrow bone. Show me stars, are drawn on charts, but breathing slow and secret hearts. And so I fight and sleep the haze, the creeping hand of hollow days. For we are born from ancient chants, the shivering, the poet's romance. Can't become what fades away. Other time won't replay. The sky has cracked 1,000 ways. Each fracture sinks a hidden place. Laughs unled and forms unseen. A beauty vast and dark between. What God designed this crooked path. A plan just love and aftermath. Still I rise from silent calls to honor one. The dark falls, the beat of echoes, infinite shapes to end the randomness. The stars decay, and all of the stars, dreams just betray. Stars decay, and hope just dissolves, and dreams just betray. The dust may stretch, the hours may bend, but in resolve, the night shall end. Two laps for passivity, with this on them, the goal we see. We must not fly prey apart, fading shadow beneath the stars. Mysteries, all times abyss, and sentiments such as this. Eldritch realms where dread may brew, holy keys to worlds anew. No ancient god, no shadowed room. Occasional rage, we bring their doom. No god design this crooked path. No plan, just love and aftermath. No god design this crooked path. No plan, just love and aftermath. And have you been stars decay, and hope just dissolves, and our dreams just betray. They have you think the stars soon begin, and hope just dissolves, and our dreams just betray. We soon see in the dark way alone, things still wrong, in the dark to the end. We soon see in the dark way alone, things still wrong, in the dark to the end.
Yo. Give it up for Cosmic Veil. Talk about self-defined sounds here. We're getting our own. This is music for islands we're hearing tonight. Everyone is on their own island with a moat surrounding them. You can't touch them. Both of these tracks. And we had discussed a little bit last week or yesterday about your drumming being so coming through in the first track, the shorter one, in such an effective way where we could really like tell your voice through it. But in general, I'm hearing it in the production, like your choice of rhythm, syncopated rhythm here, is so apparent. that it's like almost like I can tell that you're a drummer by training, even on the fully electronic rhythmic sort of generation that you got going on here. My notes are now related to the you this being a vocal project, this being this is a pop project, like this is a songwriting project. I think that you need to play a more formal frontman role with this. Like it feels too underproduced compared to the instrumental parts, the voice, I mean. And yes, like Breathplay is saying in the chat, like rethinking the vocal chain. Yes, exactly. So I don't know if it's distortion or auto tune. I mean, there are a few different choices. My first thought was just it's way too dark right now. Like it's muffled almost. It sounds almost like a low pass filter through it. It needs to be brightened up, actively EQ the voice on the highs if this is the sort of natural flat response without EQ that tends to be much more on the mid to lows emphasis here as it stands right now. So like something that will really just like brighten it, shine it through to start, proper EQing to brighten it up and compression to bring it forward, just like traditional channel stripping. And then from there, mess around. I mean, like Breathplay is saying here, like usage of the distortion similar to like what I had used in my piece that I played first, which was just kind of a like guitar amp saturation, emulated, of course. But yeah, that's a good question. How clear do you want the vocals to be? Because obviously, like your choice of effects beyond the traditional channel strip could, in various ways, obscure the lyrics themselves. But it looks like what you're saying is it's just romantic Lovecraftian meandering. Cool. Writing love songs for Cthulhu and the ancient ones at the Mountains of Madness, not necessarily the traditional beauty standards of shoddies, the at the Mountains of Madness in Antarctica, but to each their own. Personally, I would love to hear the lyrics of that more clearly. I would consider that. I think meandering is beautiful. I think that like straight abstract fantastic verbiage sort of adds to the absurdism to much of the production here. I think that we should allow that to be more legible audibly. Personally, I wouldn't distort it. I would mess with pitch. I would mess with auto tune and harmonizer, and also just doubling, like true pop recording here. Let me hear multiples of you in left and right, let's create some width to the voice, because right now it's just this like kind of weird juxtaposition of like locked in voice, compositional voice coming through in the production for both pieces, but the vocals right now seem to be taking a back seat. So I would just want to, at the very least, like have just as much deliberate choices of a foundation for the way that the voice is presented. Right now, it's not there. Right now, we have this contrast of the amount of production going in. So I personally, I still think that like these are songs with words and lead vocal melody that deserve to have a foundation, like make the bed a more traditional channel strip of a really attenuated EQ and hard compressor that just makes it the lead instrument first and foremost. And then from there, experiment, like set that foundation first in like a true audio engineer's sort of by the book way, and then tweak beyond, Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to go into it further with you, John. Sorry, Cosmic Veil. Doxed. doxed on the stream. Would happy to go into it further detail with you, just like different techniques of vocal channel strips and vocal mixing, because it's an obvious there's a whole universe of techniques depending on what you're trying to go for. But you're already in outer space. You're already on your own island, you know. But I do think that an island in outer space, a desert island planet. But I think that we still need to, you know, find ways of arrangement, of dynamic arrangement. What is the loudest versus like the medium versus the quietest? And I am hearing voice, like a feeling that it still needs to be the traditional role of the lead singer, regardless of our, you know, compositional and production stylings that are taking us far into left field, you know. Those are my thoughts. I think that you have a really, really unique compositional voice here, and we should just get this to 100% refinement, because like this is a project that needs to be recorded in 4K. You know what I mean? Like, we need that pristine attention to detail on this type of music. This isn't just man with guitar, you know, not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm a man with piano, right? I don't go for production as my, you know, takeaway of instrumentation here. This clearly does. And so we just need to be like 100% deliberate on each instrument, you know, giving us, you know, full range of options and experiments per instrument, till we figure out leaving no afterthoughts, you know. Them's the breaks. Thank you very much, Cosmic Veil. I think we got one more for today. Relatively short one today. That's all good. We got a new one from Toll Booths. Slow Howl is the name of the track, and they wrote for us on the Discord. This is a result of me messing around with white noise and samples in Pool, to see how much I could put in 4 to 5 minutes and still make the sound cohesive. Hell yeah. Pool, is that a Max for Live device? I forget. Anyways, we're going to hear it. Toll Booths, Slow Howl. Yeah. Wonderful. Beautiful way to play us out this evening from Toll Booth's The Slow Howl. I actually, it's interesting that you say that it's a maximizing of white noise samples through a single device, the Pool Max for Live device, because it's a testament to both like the flexibility of white noise as a sample source, right? Because what is white noise technically, but quite literally every audible frequency synthesized at once. That's what white noise is. It sounds the way it sounds because you're hearing every frequency being generated through a synthesis device, all simultaneously, and your brain can't comprehend psychoacoustically a pitch from those thousands of hertz bands all simultaneously generating a pitch. And so we interpret it as noise. It's only when you start to use tools like filters, and specifically bandpass filters, the devices that can shrink a frequency range of a signal down to a single or very limited hertz band range. So you're taking this wide swath potentially of thousands of hertz being generated through a noise generator, and then limiting it down to individual bands. And when you do that, you end up finding the pitch within the noise itself. And it's a very unique sort of waveform when you whittle down noise to a pitch range. It's not a sine wave. It's not a square wave or triangle wave. It's still a noise wave. It still has this fluctuation, this imperfection to it. But it ends up with it's a very human sort of form of synthesis when we find a way to filter white noise. That's all that it's all that we really need. There's so much we can get out of it as sound designers and producers. And in particular, when we're utilizing granulation as well, which it sounds like in this case with the Pool device, Toll Booths is saying it's basically a modular DAW within a DAW, a modular DAW within a DAW. What you could end up with specifically with granular synthesis, obviously, is taking any sample or type of sound and turning it into its own frozen grain, unique waveform that could then be repitched further and sampled and turned into its own instrument, its own virtual instrument in that way. So combining these two things, specifically white noise generation and granular processing, it sounds like a very surefire way to get a unique palette of synthesis, a unique sort of combination of timbres that to some degree have some harshness depending on the obviously several channels in this piece, depending on which channel. Some of them have a very noisy, audibly noisy quality to it, and others are warm and rich in consonants. This was just as much about harmonics as it is about noisy timbres. So all this to say is Toll Booths is showing us that we don't need too much when it comes to sound designing. We could work with a whole lot, starting with just various colorations of synthesized noise, and let this be one example of that. I think that it's a great challenge for folks, and perhaps in the near future, for a future monthly project, we might be see, all you guys are inspiring me for new prompts and text scores and sort of compositional framework challenges for folks. Breathplay had presented us with something last month related to feedback, and that inspired our feedback piece for this current month, and perhaps noise will be on the plate. Will be on the docket in the near future for future monthly projects. We'll see. No, but this was absolutely lovely. Personally, I mean, I think that like the only thing that this could really use, ironically, is like a roughening up. Like the noise is very clean. Part of me would love for there to be like actually harsher, crumbled moments of this. There's a lot of soft, long, elongated envelopes here. Padded envelopes, long attacks, and I was just waiting for there to be some, you know. That's what I love about folks like Ben Frost, for example, which this piece reminded me a lot of Ben Frost stuff. Is we could find a way to be tastefully noisy and harsh in timbre, but not necessarily harsh in volume, you know. And that's what I mean here. Is like I would love for there to be some violence in your sound design, because obviously this is giving us plenty to work with from the softer palette of sound design, utilizing noise. But like we can also embrace noise as an abrasive sound tool as well. There ain't nothing wrong with that. So that would just be my only thought there, was just like I feel like we're covering all these different bases of timbre through sound design. But you know, sometimes it's cool to get a little rough with the edges, you know, to get a little abrasive, to get a little brutal, and violent, sonic violence. But them's my thoughts. Them's the breaks, them's my thoughts. And I believe that's all we have for this evening. I appreciate y'all for hanging for this hour special, this hour-long session today for Group Critique Fight Club. Once again, oh, here we go. Toll Booth's responding. Within the context of the album, this part is supposed to be a bit of a break from violence to make it less clean. I've been thinking about reamping. All right, well, that makes sense. If this is our respite from otherwise more brutal and harsh stuff, then totally go with that. But yeah, I think roughing it around the edges, saturation, doesn't need to even audibly be harsh or distorted in a formal sense. I think, yeah, reamping is one way to create even more unique colorations of noise. And, you know, literal reamping or at reamping emulation through plugins, you know, plenty of options there to experiment with, but that would be great. Really interesting way to take some of these sounds out of the box, you know, to create even more of that hiss, you know. I was just talking, we were listening to Stars of the Lid live recordings in the lobby today because I got so many of them given to me. And I think what was so nice about them is that, like, especially on their 30th anniversary record that just came out, Music for Nitrous Oxide, it really is just like 2 amps in a room, sometimes with guitars and pedals being sent through them, sometimes with just like a DX7 and pedals being sent through them. And it's like, it's a very rich sound palette. If you want to call that sound design, it's very still analog hardware for the most part. And yet there is still this crumply coloration to, and you know, it's not harsh, but it's still noisy coloration to much of this timbre. And I think a lot of that just has to do with the fact that they're playing through tube amps, you know, even when they're playing a digital FM, like on DX7, sending that through the tube amp with a volume pedal into a delay pedal. It's just like, we're in this unique palette where it's not fully digital, it's not fully analog, and I think that's something quite remarkable that ain't dead. We should absolutely still strive for this hybridity, you know, between a fully locked in the box sound design practice, as well as just moving air, because that's all that amps are doing with speakers, is that they're moving air, you know. It's electronics into oxygen, you know, voltage into oxygen, and that gives us there's a unique coloration to that. timbral changes abound. I love me some timbre, though. I've been saying that word for the last 5 minutes a bunch, but I don't care. It's a good word. Timbre. However you pronounce it. All right. That's going to do it for today. Remember, next week, your monthly project. Stars of the Lid have to be with 50% of my DNA at this point. Good man or woman or whoever you are. Good person. Much worse things that could exist in your DNA, without a doubt. All right. Remember, we got ourselves the monthly project due next week. One more time for everybody, reading out the assignment for you. Just as a reminder, create a piece of music of any style in 5 minutes or less that consists solely of samples of feedback. This can manifest itself through traditional microphone, an instrument pickup to amplifier feedback, no input feedback, mobile communications device speaker feedback, or some manifestation of this phenomenon. And there are other options. There are other manifestations of feedback, and I would love to know where you find them. The samples do not have to be original, and if you are unable to record them yourself. So if you find other recordings of feedback that you'd like to use as a sample source to recompose with, by all means, utilize them. But feel free to make your own samples as well. That's due next week. Please take part. Would love to hear what you got. Once again, many thanks to Tape Trade for supporting. And we will see you next time. Have a good week, y'all. Take care.